Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock. Welcome.
We're back. We're back. You survived.
Yeah, we took an unplanned week off, but
it worked well because it's funny because anytime that you reach out and you're like, I can't do the show for whatever reason, and there's always, maybe it's just me projecting, but there always seems to be this tinge of you feel guilty, but it always seems to be the week that I also kind of need, it's very beneficial for me. Last week was really hectic on Thursday, and it's
I just could not do a show. I was so exhausted last week, and this week hasn't been better. but I didn't want to call it off twice, and I really needed to check out for a bit. I say this is really intense work, but we've talked about it recently. It's just kind of a lot of mental. Okay, we got to do the show. Well, I got to make time to edit it over the weekend. It's just sometimes you just need to be fuck this.
I think what it really is it's not. Yeah, like you said, it's not that much. Because it's obviously we're not some huge production, and also very clearly we don't put a ton of work into getting the shows ready each week.
Right.
There's no research and interviews and that kind of stuff is what I mean. But I think we're both, and I think this is most of the world right now, but I know I can definitely say the last 2, 3, 4 months even, and it just keeps dragging on, but it keeps getting fucking worse, at work and everything, that there's just nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
So it's tough, and me and my coworker have been talking about it because it's you, part of you keeps going on oh well, it's got to get better, and then it's you get to the next day and you're nope, getting worse still.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, last week was really bad, and I was I just need to recharge. I'll be fine this week, and then this week, even more shit was going on, and I was God damn it. But we're back. Nothing will totally stop this derailed train, until somebody destroys it. A bomb could drop, and that would stop
It'd
it.
Be a mercy killing. They won't even get convicted of anything then.
Yeah. So on the show we tell each other stories, and this is not technically a creepypasta. This is from the Nosleep Reddit, which is another one of our favorite stomping grounds. And it might be kind of long, so I want to jump in without our usual 20-minute
preamble.
Yeah. So this is by Malia Girl 1314. And the story is, or the title of the post, if you've never been to the Nosleep Reddit, sometimes they're stories, sometimes they're told in hey, this fucked up things happened to me. Anybody deal with this? It's a normal Reddit post.
Yeah.
Even though it's a work of fiction. But I think this is meant to be more of a proper story. And it's called, My Wife Has Been Peeking at Me from Around Corners and Behind Furniture. It's gone from weird to terrifying.
Okay, I like it already. That's a hilarious premise that I would have never even...
Yeah. I was going to say, you're married, and I'm sure your wife does this to you. This is probably normal married behavior.
Yeah, well, when you started, the first couple words there, my wife is peeking at me. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then from around corners and behind furniture, and I'm all right, that's getting there. And then we said, and it's gone from, for whatever,
marriage
to terrifying.
Is finding that special someone to say, I want you to follow me around like a fucked up Slender Man.
Right.
For the rest of our days.
We're not that domestic abuse-y thing where they're actually spying on you, but enough to you're obvious enough that they can see that you're doing it, but you're just doing it anyway. Yeah.
All right. My wife Lynn and I have been together for 6 years and married for 11 months. Our entire history together has been very normal, and never once have I noticed any weird behaviors or red flags. That's a red flag in itself. If you've never noticed anything, really, you never noticed anything wrong with them, like, then that's a demon, and you need to get out. I'll be like every other, like, relationship Reddit commenter, like, who's like, advice is sever the relationship.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough how out of character this whole thing is for her. Lynn is very kind, intelligent, and thoughtful. She's always been the no-nonsense type of person. Being childish or trying to scare me is not something she would normally do. She doesn't even like watching horror movies. When we first started dating, she agreed to watch The Shining with me because she knew how much I loved horror. She was so scared that she didn't even make it through half of the movie before we had to turn it off. She isn't into anything creepy and has never been into pranks. It's just not her cup of tea, and that's fine. But that's what was so strange about this. It's just so unlike her. I should also add that she never had any mental health issues, and as far as I'm aware, it doesn't run in her family. Another red flag. Like, what's with these... You found a perfectly normal, fucking thoughtful woman?
With a normal family, because that's the thing. You can find normal people; their families are fucked up. Then,
that's
somebody somewhere has something going on.
But then again, it's like, you fucking husband or wife. You think they're the normal one when everybody else in their family's fucked up. That just means you haven't, like, gotten to the fucking full moon werewolf transformation part.
Yeah, what are those people that eat kiwis with the skin on? That kind of thing.
Yeah, like werewolves do.
Right.
Accosting the produce aisle with no restraint. I know some people are able to hide their mental health problems, but in the 6 years we've been together, I think I'd have seen some sort of sign. 2 months ago, I was in the kitchen making myself some coffee before work. I was running a bit late that morning and knew I wouldn't be able to make it to Dunkin' Donuts for my usual morning fix. I took a sip of my coffee as I hurried down the hall towards the front door when I happened to notice Lynn peeking at me from around the corner ahead of me. Okay, she's cheating on you?
Yeah.
She's
still here?
She's waiting for you to leave. Noticed Lynn peeking at me from around the corner ahead of me. I could only see her eyes and a strand of her long dark hair hanging against the wall.
Oh my God, what the fuck happened to the top of her head? Because physically there should be more there.
There's a fan blowing. It's like a fucking shampoo commercial. The rest of her body was concealed behind the corner. I nearly spilled my coffee when I saw her. I did burn the shit out of my lips. Geez, Lynn, I said, wiping a few drops of coffee from my pants. You scared the shit out of me. She immediately popped out of view like a little kid that had been caught. I heard her scurry off towards the living room, and by the time I got to the front door, she was out of sight. It was really weird and just totally out of character for her, like I said, but I also found it kind of funny that she was being more playful and a little less serious. I shouted that I loved her and called her a weirdo. I called her a fucking freak. I said, you fucking dumb idiot.
I mean... Yeah, I would have a hard time just laughing it off and be like, oh, goodbye, honey. If she just made me burn my lips and spill coffee on my pants, I'd feel a little annoyed. But, okay. He's a more...
weirdo.
He's like, a more stable individual than me, I guess. But,
yeah, she actually rigs the house with Home Alone traps. And you're like, oh, you.
Yeah. Lovable scamp.
As I shut the door behind me, I heard her laughing. Her behavior was a bit odd, but it certainly wasn't something to call a priest over. I will say, if this was a practical joke, it's pretty good. You have to do it for a long time, but just
because just once it's like, oh, you're just being weird, but when you're going on month 8,
but, well, I can find more and more elaborate places to peek at people, just hidden enough that you're obscured, but enough that they can see you're doing it. I forgot about it by lunch, and by the time I got home, she was her normal self. I didn't bring it up, and neither did she, and life went on. The next incident happened 3 days later, which I don't know if I would call that life went on. That's a pretty small chunk of time. It was around 2 a.m.
Life continued as normal.
Yeah. And everything went back to normal. That night.
For a minute and a half. Yeah, right.
It was around 2 a.m. and I had woken up to get a drink. I was standing at the kitchen island, jug of OJ in hand, when I felt a strong feeling that I was being watched. For whatever reason, I looked down at the floor and saw my wife's smiling face staring back. She was peeking at me from the other side of the island, staring up at me with wide, unblinking eyes and grinning. Grinning like the Cheshire Cat. I screamed, I'll admit it. Not out of irritation, but fear. What's a scream of irritation?
Rah!
Rah, rah. That's my irritated scream.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah. For some reason at that moment I was scared. At the sound of my scream, Lynn scuttled backwards out of my view, her hands and feet smacking the tile floor as she hurried out of the kitchen on all fours. I didn't run after her or even yell after her.
I like that for some reason I was scared, as if it was unusual to be scared by randomly, like, seeing somebody, like, you didn't expect to be there. Like, I mean, there's been times where Tara's been, like, behind me and I didn't know it, and she's not even doing anything weird, like peeking at you. You just turn around and if you don't expect somebody to be there, you're going to jump.
It's like it's like a video game NPC, like, party member who has to, like, if you go too far away from them, they have to, like, teleport to you. And it's like, and you're not expecting it. There was like a Sherlock Holmes game, and there's like an infamous clip of it where no matter what you do, Watson is always right behind you, and you can't lose him. And it's the scariest fucking thing.
I can't. See, that's a good idea for a creepypasta, or just like a short horror film. Like, the thing's not doing anything. It's just, no matter what you do, it's just there. Like, the person's just standing there. Like, yeah.
I was watching a video the other day. It was like one of those video essays, and it was talking about how it was talking about the Nier games, like Nier Automata and Nier Replicant and stuff, and a couple of movies where, like, how it's like so much scarier to not be able to tell what a thing wants because you can't communicate with them. Like, it's scary to be attacked by something, but it was like he showed a clip of this movie. I forget the name of it. It was relatively recent, but it's like the plot is like a woman is like shacked up in a house, and these aliens are like trying to break in and attack her, that she thinks. But the alien like gets in, and then it does this weird fucked up hand posture thing where it's like it feels like it's trying to communicate, but it's also like you don't know if it's like gonna just fucking spring and attack her. And like, it's like when you don't really know what the thing wants, like, that's so much more unsettling than being able to say, like, okay, that's just a threat.
Now I'm thinking about, like, so you're out in nature, like on a hike. Obviously, getting attacked by a wild animal is terrifying. Pretty much no matter what kind of animal it is, because even if it's something small and, like, harmless, then I always think, like, why is this thing attacking me when it should be afraid of me? Like, that almost instills more fear. But now I'm thinking, like, so say a deer comes up to you and you're like, oh, cool, a deer. And then every step you take, it mirrors your step. It's not like a threatening posture. It's not trying to, like, come up and, like, get food from you. It's just starts to, like, follow you step for step. That would be fucking terrifying after a while.
Okay, where was I? I didn't run after her or even yell after her. I just stood there frozen in shock, wondering what the fuck had possessed her to do that. It took me a little longer than I'd like to admit to go back upstairs, but I eventually did. When I got to our bedroom, Lynn was lying on her side, asleep, or at least pretending to be. You should go peek at her.
Right. That's for anybody that's not married or just recently married looking for advice here, if your spouse starts doing something like this, the best way to address it is just do it back.
Yeah, you gotta be
like,
I'm sorry you thought you were like marrying into peaceful bliss. Marriage is about one-upsmanship.
Yeah, like imagine like so I clearly don't know where this story's going yet, but so imagine some demon like possesses this woman and it's like messing with this guy. But then all of a sudden the guy starts messing with it back and the demon would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to do now. Like, I don't know how to respond to this.
Yeah.
And you win. Or it just elevates things to the next level. Like, I don't know. One of the two. But it at least gets some results. Like, not doing anything,
I'm talking
no results
like when she walks by the bathroom, be pissing and don't break eye contact. Like,
but not into the toilet, like on the floor.
Yeah.
Just like...
bank shot it. You know? But again, that takes practice. Warm up to that.
I do kind of like the idea that you just have the door open, you're taking a piss, but like you're already looking, like
you're ready for her to walk by. Yeah,
and then like you say, you lock eyes and you don't say anything or do anything. You just
Stern,
I like that.
Nothing sexual. This is about competition.
All right.
Because she was weird one time. It took me a little longer than I'd like to admit. Okay, or at least she was pretending to be. I stood there for a while watching her breathing to be sure she was really asleep. I had the feeling she might jump out at me the moment I got into bed. Well, nothing wrong with that. Key to a healthy marriage.
Right.
But she didn't. I climbed into bed and she didn't even move. Her breathing was soft and deep, and I was starting to wonder if I had dreamt the whole thing. The next morning, I waited for her to come down for coffee, and after handing her a mug and kissing her cheek, I decided to ask her about it. What was that about last night? I asked, keeping my tone light so I didn't offend or embarrass her. She frowned over her cup of coffee, shaking her head like she had no clue what I was referring to. You were peeking at me again, from over there, I said, pointing to the spot on the floor by the kitchen island. She followed my gaze, and when she looked back at me, she burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that I couldn't help but join her. You creep me the fuck out sometimes, you know that? I said. She giggled and set her cup on the counter and wrapped her arms around my neck. You creep me out all the time, so I guess we're even, she teased.
I like the you creep me out sometimes after starting the story with she's never done anything creepy before. So like now 2 times is sometimes.
Yeah. You know, you're a real freak. Twice. We said our goodbyes and left for work. As I drove, I kept thinking about how creepy it was. Creepy it had been seeing her grinning at me from behind the island like that. The sounds her hands made on the floor as she crawled away. I told myself she was just trying to be silly, just trying to join me in my love of all things horror. It's not like I was afraid of her, but it still didn't sit right with me. I started seeing her peeking at me more and more. Sometimes she'd be peeking out from behind the couch or living room curtains. Once she even managed to get inside her grandmother's old trunk that sits at the foot of our bed. I might not have even known she was there at all had the trunk's hinges not given her away. She had the lid popped up just enough so that only half her face peeked through. She had been grinning like an excited toddler. It was unnerving. I didn't even know what to say to her. All I could do was stare. When I finally found my voice, I asked her why on earth was she doing this. Well, at this point, I would be like, okay, she has a TikTok or some shit.
Right. Also, like, why would you wait to this point to ask her?
Yeah.
Like...
She didn't answer, but she had slowly closed the lid, shutting herself inside the trunk. Flip that latch and go to bed, buddy.
Right.
You just solved your problem. I just walked away feeling disturbed. I didn't understand why she was doing it, but it clearly made her happy. What a good husband. Well, as long as she's happy. I just hoped she would tire of the game quickly. Lynn didn't peek at me for the next 2 weeks. I started to think she was done with her weird prank, and I was relieved. We were watching a show on Netflix one night, and I jokingly said that I hadn't seen her peeking at me lately, and that she must have given up on her spy game. She looked up at me with a small smile and said, maybe I've just gotten better at it.
Perfect answer.
I didn't say anything, but I wondered whether or not she was joking. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. Was she still peeking at me? Man, if she stopped and just said
right.
that,
That's what I mean.
That is top tier trolling. You just made your husband a paranoid fucking psycho in the span of a couple weeks. Well played. Was she still peeking at me when I wasn't looking and I just hadn't noticed? Did she find my porn? And if so, what the hell was she getting out of this? I started to feel paranoid, constantly checking whether she was watching from around the corner or behind a door. That's just marriage.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I was jumpy whenever I was home and she wasn't in full view of me. I felt stupid and a little crazy. But after a few weeks without another incident, I began to relax. I stopped checking behind furniture and walls and told myself it was just a bad memory. Then a few days ago, things got so much worse. Lynn left to go to a friend's, and I lounged on the couch and played a couple games on my laptop. Around 9 p.m., I hopped in the shower, and as I was washing the soap from my hair, I felt that awful feeling that I was being watched.
Well, if you stay at home playing laptop games on your computer or whatever all day, yep, and then take a shower at 9:30 p.m., like, you're being suspicious at this point, buddy. Like,
yeah.
Unless you're going out on the town, I guess.
Yeah, what the fuck do you...
Like, I'm a shower guy. Like, I don't skip showers very often, but if it's 9:30 and I haven't showered yet, chances are, especially if I'm home alone, I'll say, fuck it. It can wait till morning.
If it was just like a Saturday of me, like, playing games and shit, you know, and I haven't showered, it's like, well, that's what Sunday mornings are for.
Exactly, at that point.
But I do know there are people out there who can't go to bed without a shower. Like,
but they deserve to be peeked at by creepy spouses.
Agreed.
Because something's up.
Agreed. I think we all deserve that. I think we should all have a creepy spouse wanting to watch us naked in the shower. But, like, I don't know. It's a Saturday. Are you're going to bed at 10? Let's be real.
Yeah, me? Yes. I'm old.
Yeah. I slowly opened my eyes and almost had a fucking heart attack. Lynn was peeking from behind the shower curtain, her entire head stretched into the shower, leaving just her body outside. Her long dark hair hung around against the curtain, the ends dripping with water. Her mouth hung open in a terrible grin, eyes wide and red, as if she hadn't blinked in a while. I screamed and jumped back against the wall. She didn't move, nor did her smile waver. Her makeup ran down her cheeks in 2 black streaks. She looked giddy and completely deranged. I was fucking terrified. We stood like that for a few moments, neither of us saying a word. Finally, after what felt like forever, she slowly pulled her head back out of the shower, and I watched her blurry figure through the curtain as she moved backwards towards the bathroom door. A second later, the bathroom door slammed shut, hard enough to rattle the mirror. I screamed again and jumped out of the shower to lock the door. I stayed inside the bathroom for over an hour. Maybe I overreacted to some of you, but joke or not, I wasn't going to put up with the crazy shit anymore. I'm staying in this bathroom forever.
I'm trying to picture what kind of scream, because
like
the first scream I get, like, again, like if I was like washing my hair and had my eyes closed and I open my eyes and somebody's like head sticking in the shower, I don't know that I'm not really a screamer though.
Oh,
yeah, there would probably be like a what, and there would definitely be a jump, and then I'd slip in on the wet floor and hit my head and die, because that's what happens to me. But then the second scream where he's like, she slammed the door and I screamed again, like I'm picturing like a Ned Flanders girly, like ah.
It says what a fucking degenerate I am, but even like describing how deranged she looked, I'm just like, I'm in the shower and she's here. I might be hitting that.
Yeah. And it said her mouth was open, like you start inching forward.
You know, you look like you need the doctor, but we can figure that out afterwards, I guess.
Hey, I can work with this. My standards aren't that high.
Yeah. You know, I'm not the best. I don't look great either. So, who am I to judge? Maybe we're just two deranged, ugly fucking freaks locked in this crazy thing called life. But joke or not, I wasn't going to put up with this crazy shit anymore. That's what I kept telling myself as I paced in my bathroom, stopping to listen at the door every few minutes. Suddenly I heard a muffled sound, and I pressed my ear against the bathroom door, straining to listen. I couldn't hear anything, but I envisioned Lynn standing on the other side of the door, giggling at her joke. I felt a surge of anger. I was beyond pissed at being made to feel scared in my own house and made to hide in the bathroom for an hour. All for what? Some joke? Well, you didn't have to stay there for an hour, dude.
I like that thought, too. Being made scared in my own house. Yeah. My own house is the place I'm scared the most often. Probably because I'm here the most often. But I mean...
Yeah, and that's part of home ownership, dude.
Right.
It's like you need to defend your house. Kevin McAllister learned this shit in Home Alone. What makes you so special?
Right.
If it was a joke, it was an awful one.
No, it's a fantastic one.
If this is a joke, it's like the best joke ever told. Right. From one spouse to another. What the fuck, Lynn? I snapped. This shit is getting really fucking annoying. I waited for her to apologize or to call me a jerk, but instead I heard a faint moan. So quiet I wondered if I had heard it at all, and then complete silence. Lynn? I called out, not able to even hide the shakiness in my voice. I got no response, just my own heavy breathing. I swear to God, just fucking stop it, I yelled, pounding my fist on the door. I waited for her to cuss me out, something I would expect from me talking to her like that. I never screamed at her before. But there was nothing, just the occasional drip from the shower head. I won't deny that I was scared, too afraid to open the damn door and face my own wife. I waited on...
Spoiler alert, the drip wasn't the shower head.
Damn it, Lynn, I peed on my feet again.
I just took a fucking shower. Now I'm going to have to...
I waited another 30 minutes or so, which feels like a fucking lifetime when you're scared. Finally, I decided I wasn't going to spend the night hiding in my bathroom, so I got down on my knees and peered under the door. I almost expected
like
to
a
see,
man.
Yeah, like a big boy. I almost expected to see her face peeking back at me, but thankfully I didn't. I could see straight down the hallway to the top of the stairs, but no Lynn. I didn't know if I should be happy about that or not. I looked for a few minutes, waiting to see her head pop up over the top step, but it never came. I stood up, my hand hovering over the door, and mentally prepared myself to open it. I slowly turned the lock with shaky fingers. I was about to yank it open when I heard a sound that still made me feel nauseous when I think about it. A moan. Louder than before, but this time I was able to tell just where it was coming from. I turned my head to the closet door as if in slow motion, and locked eyes with my wife, who was peeking out at me from the slight gap. Her eyes were still wide as ever, as her mouth was hanging open in the most grotesque, gaping smile I had ever seen. I didn't even scream. I was too scared for even that. Her hands were clasped to her chest, body trembling with sheer delight, as if she could barely contain her excitement. A short, raspy moan bubbled up from her throat, deep and raw, sending a shiver through my entire body. Somehow I found the ability to pull the bathroom door open and ran as fast as I could all the way down the steps, snagging my keys and the phone from the table in the living room before running outside to my car. I could hear her
probably
buck-ass naked.
Right. Because
Lynn's husband's out there in his fucking Long Johnson swapping in the breeze. I could hear her shrill laughter behind me, but I didn't hear her getting closer. Again, like, if this isn't paranormal and it's just her fucking with him, so good. Like, this could be a Jackass movie with one bit in it.
Yeah, except I could see that, like, Since it would be at about this point in the proceedings where like you grab a gun or a knife because you're convinced that it's a demon or something. I don't know. Like,
is this?
Well, that's not. See,
I would
that's
need a little more to be convinced that I need to murder my wife.
That's the thing.
Then she smiled at me in the closet.
Well, that's a bit extreme. But and that's why these kind of pranks, because you do see kind of pranks similar, but not like over a prolonged period of time. In real life, you do that, and there's a 50-50 chance they'll scream, and a 50-50 chance they'll like just out of reaction, like punch or kick you, like
You can't. To be clear, you can't do this with every type of husband. If you
you got to make sure you've got.
And your fucking hubby has a 6-shooter, probably don't do this to him.
Right, like there's the flight or fight people. Make sure your spouse is a flight person before you do these pranks.
Which, to be fair, the way this is set up, it seems pretty obvious this guy would run.
Yeah, he's right.
So,
and fairness too, I like that. And I like that the guy in the story has made no bones about like admitting, be like, no, I'm a chicken shit. Like,
well, I'm a big pussy, and this bothered me.
Right.
And also, a prank needs a little bit of danger. So I respect the effort she's putting into this, because it could end badly for her.
Right.
I didn't bother shutting the front door. I drove away from the house faster than I legally should have, shivering the entire time, either from fear or the cold, maybe a little of both. I hadn't grabbed a coat or even a pair of shoes. I was still in my boxers and my hair was still damp. I drove straight to my brother Chris's house about 40 minutes away, ignoring any and every call and text I got. I didn't check my phone until I was safely parked in my brother's driveway. Lynn had called 4 times and sent a flurry of texts, all wondering where I'd gone and why I left, quote, like that. I threw my phone at the dash in a rage, furious at her nonchalant attitude. My brother and his wife were surprised to see me, especially dressed in just a pair of boxers.
Right.
But Chris explained this is just what our family does, apparently. But told me to stay as long as I needed. Chris lent me some clothes and asked me what happened. I told him Lynn and I had a fight, but didn't get into the details. I didn't want him to think I was overreacting, leaving my wife over a prank, even if it was a strange one.
That's what's so genius about it, because it's right. Like,
it
would be very hard to describe this to somebody in a way that they would like be sympathetic with you. If you like,
you're the biggest. Yeah, to you, from the outside, it's like the biggest overreaction. And for him, it's like, no, I'm legit being stalked by a demon.
By my own wife. Like, right.
I mean, hadn't I encouraged her for years to lighten up instead of being so serious all the time? I had wanted her to relax and loosen up, but this was definitely not what I had had in mind. I tried to sleep on their sofa, but my brain wouldn't let me sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lynn's face staring at me from inside the closet. Knowing she had been in there with me the entire time made my skin crawl. She had never left the fucking bathroom at all. Instead, she slipped inside the closet and slammed the bathroom door shut to fool me. The mere thought of going back home gave me anxiety. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Chris ended up giving me a sleeping pill, so I was able to get a little rest. My sleep was filled with terrible dreams, all of Lynn's smiling face. I woke up just as the sun started to rise.
See, that's another phrase that's like really good taken out of content. Like, I had terrible dreams of my
beautiful wife. Yeah.
Smiling at me. Yeah.
My sore body ached from the sofa and I felt drained. I knew I'd have to call Lynn at some point. Technically, no. You can get a lawyer.
Spouses leave all the time. Well, and I mean.
But I didn't know what to say to her. I wouldn't be going home unless she gave me her word she would never do any more creepy shit. I just wanted my wife back. Her normal, serious self never looked so good to me. I was contemplating calling her and telling her that when that familiar feeling came over me.
See, that's very realistic too. The guy's like, this is terrifying. She needs to knock it off. But maybe if I use this line, I can get some. Like, that's what it sounded like to me. It's like,
Yeah.
look, Lynn,
find a way to turn this into a I love you just the way you are. I was being watched. I was staring at the ceiling, my heart in my throat. I didn't want to look away, but the longer I ignored the feeling, the worse it got. My eyes drifted away from the ceiling almost on their own. Her face was pressed up against the window beside the couch, staring down at me with that same gaping smile. Drool dribbled down her lips, leaving 2 long streaks down the glass. I didn't know how long she had been there, but something told me she had been there quite a while, possibly all night. I didn't bother screaming, though I was afraid anger trumped any fear I felt at that moment. I jumped up from the couch and pounded my palms against the glass. Lynn! Are you crazy? What the hell is wrong with you? Just go home. Now! She didn't move, and her ghastly expression never changed. If anything, her smile only grew, as if she had never been more elated. I could hear Chris and his wife moving around upstairs, as if Lynn could hear them from her place outside. Her head twitched slightly in their direction, and she began to close her mouth slowly. Chris called my name from upstairs, obviously concerned. I turned to see him and his wife Rebecca hurrying down the steps. When I turned back to the window, Lynn had gone. The only sign she had been there at all was the 2 streaks of drool still dripping down the glass. I tried explaining to Chris and Rebecca about waking up to see Lynn watching me through their window. They were skeptical. Who wouldn't be? Chris and I went outside to the spot in front of the window, but there were no footprints in the dirt, just a slight indent. Animal, probably, Chris guessed, and I didn't argue. He and Rebecca assumed I dreamt the entire episode, but they didn't understand. I was too tired to explain it to them. I called out of work that day and turned my cell off. I didn't want to face Lynn. Just talking to her was too much for me at that point. I really started to believe something was irreversibly wrong with her. That no matter what promises she made, we would never be the same again. The thought saddened me to my core. I cried most of the morning. By noon, I figured I was ready to confront her. Give her one last chance to explain herself. I could at least give her that after 6 years, I told myself. I turned my phone on and saw the dozens of texts she had sent, all from a seemingly concerned wife. Can we talk? I love you. Please call me. I'm really worried. Can you answer? Just come home. And more of the same. All texts telling me she loved me and she wanted me home. How worried she was. Not a damn one addressing the crazy shit she pulled. Like she had been acting like a character from a Stephen King book.
Right, you don't do that. You don't address. You deny. You deny it.
Yep. Even her texts were different. She normally texted novels just to tell me to pick up a loaf of bread. You'd think she'd have more to say to me after her bizarre shenanigans. Okay, is it a threat or shenanigans? Like, the terminology matters here.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is that he's still, like, kind of insistent. Like, he's like, this is really pissing me off. I had to drive to my brother's house in my underwear. But it's still just pranks.
Yeah. There's something irreversibly wrong with my wife. She's goofballing.
It's a goofballing.
I know it probably...
Just now I'm picturing the end of the story of detective, like we've seen this before. Goofballing.
I know it probably seems childish to some of you who are miles away from this situation, but if you saw the way Lynn had looked at me, how she scampered away on all fours like some wild animal, grinning at me like from the inside the closet like a lunatic, then I think you would find my reaction was warranted. I ended up staying with Chris and Rebecca for another night. I didn't wake up yesterday until afternoon, and thankfully I didn't see Lynn's face watching me through the window. I'm
sure his brother and his wife appreciate that too, just showing up crazy and then staying an extra night and sleeping to noon. Like,
I mean, if it were my brother, I wouldn't think anything of it. That is his MO, in fact.
Yeah, well, I guess that's true. I don't know.
Show up, sleep till noon. Drink all my soda.
It's like the Hamburglar of soda pop.
Of soda, yeah. because Grimace has been laid off. The one character who drank a lot of soda. We just put it all in the Hamburglar now. I don't want to pry because it's not my place, but is this fight something that can be mended? Rebecca asked. She had made us both a sandwich for lunch, and I knew she wanted to breach the subject without seeming to be nosy. I don't know. She's like a different person, I said, choosing my words carefully. I still wasn't ready for her or Chris to know the full extent of the batshit craziness I had been dealing with. People change, Ben. Oh, shit. The character's name is Ben. Fuck.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. It's happening to me.
That's the twist. This is your future, Ben.
Again, I wouldn't handle it the same way. This whole time I would be like, I'm going to die, but I'm married. That means I probably got some.
I could kind of see, I don't know, fuck anymore the way everything's been like with work and stuff. I think maybe I'd be there too, where you're like, you turn around and you would have, like I said, naturally you jump. If there's something you don't expect, you'd be like, oh.
Yeah.
And then you'd be just back,
I feel like I would get used to it. The only time it would piss me off is when I'm like losing at Tekken. It's like, I do not need you fucking looking at me right now. Go fucking peek somewhere else.
I've talked about it before, probably when we were doing the video game podcast. Maybe not. Tara's got this magic ability to like if I'm getting really mad at a game, something like Trials or Dark Souls or whatever, and it's clear that I'm getting mad at it because I'll be like, fuck,
motherfucker,
son of a bitch, or whatever. Yeah, and she'll be like, did you lose? Or did you die? And it's like, and she says it like the most innocent way, like she's curious. And it's like, no, I just beat it. That's why I'm so pissed off.
Yeah, it's that bystander thing. Like, this has nothing to do with you, but read the room right now.
Right. Like, it's very clear what emotion I'm portraying right now.
No, I always do this when I win.
And it's like the worst possible, and maybe she's just a master troll and I don't give her credit for it. She's doing it on purpose, but it's like that's like the worst thing you can say when you're frustrated to the point of cussing at a game. My brother
is that type of troll where it's like, and it's bizarre. I'm better than him at most fighting games we play, but he's this fucking savant at Tekken apparently. So he's just been beating my ass for like the last 2 weeks. And it's like, I'm pissed off, and I'm like, I fucking blocked that. And he's like, well, you didn't. It's like, motherfucker, shut the fuck up. All right. People change, Ben, but she's still the same woman you married. Maybe you both just need to talk through your issues. Whatever's going on, I'm sure it can be fixed, she said. Ever the peacemaker. I think it's beyond that now. I don't think talking would help. I just don't trust her. I said, the word stung in my heart. I missed and loved my wife, but how could I live with someone like that? Living in constant fear didn't sound too appealing. Lynn loves you. She has to be absolutely crushed, she said. I don't know about that, I said. Well, she certainly seemed like it to me. I've never seen her so upset. Very much unlike the Lynn I know, Rebecca said, shaking her head sadly. It took a full minute for her words to really sink in, and when they did, I felt dread worming its way through my skin. Wait, what do you mean you saw her? You saw Lynn? I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Rebecca nodded casually as if that fact wasn't nightmare fuel. Maybe for her it wasn't. She stopped by this morning just after Chris left for work, she said, cleaning the plates from the table. I didn't see her car, though. Maybe she took an Uber or something. Beck, what did she say? Did she come inside? I asked, sweat starting to break out on my forehead. I began looking around, examining corners as though a predator lurked behind them. No, she just asked if you were awake yet, and I said that you weren't. I asked if she wanted me to wake you, but she said no, just said to let you sleep. She said as she washed the dishes. That's all? She didn't say anything else? I asked. No, she looked awful, though. Like she hadn't slept in days. I think you should call her. I got up from the table and thanked Rebecca for lunch. I felt a little bit better at the knowledge that at least she hadn't come inside. Still, I needed to double check that the doors were locked. I sat for a while trying to figure out what to do next. I didn't want to go home, but I felt that I owed it to Lynn to help her if I could. Hadn't I swore an oath to love and honor her through sickness and in health?
Yeah, but nobody really means that.
Why are you asking me? You're like, well, I don't know what you actually swore that day.
That's true.
Clearly, she was very sick. If she was sick, which I truly believe she was, I had to try and get her the help she needed. But I didn't even know where to start. I didn't want to call the police. And besides, what the hell was I going to tell them? That my wife was peeking at me? That she was being
yes,
creepy?
Exactly that. Like,
yeah.
Hey, police, my wife's peeking at me. My wife's looking at me.
We got a peeky peep over here. Got a new backup. My God, she's been peeking at him for the last 6 months.
That's a 2719.
Man, Chief, it doesn't get easier, does it? That she was being creepy? As bizarre as she had been, she still hadn't committed any crime. Not yet, anyway. The police would have probably said that I was overreacting, but this wasn't some prank. It felt wrong. Dangerous, even. Like something sinister lurked beneath her smile. I knew as her husband I was well within my rights to have her committed.
Really? So the story was written in like 1930.
Yeah,
I didn't know that part.
As her husband, I had every right to inspire a witch hunt. But what if she simply acted normal in their presence? She had obviously been able to fool Rebecca into thinking she was just a concerned wife. As long as the doctors didn't find her a danger to herself or others, they would have no choice but to release her after 72 hours. I felt lost and overwhelmed.
So is this a real rule? Can I have my wife or vice versa for 72 hours with no evidence of anything?
You can. So, I think there has to be the threat of violence to themselves or others, and then you can have somebody involuntarily committed for a certain amount of time.
That makes sense. Although I'd imagine you would also have to have at least semblance of proof, evidence that they've.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
My wife's got weird fucking eyes. Isn't gonna probably cut it. But it is a thing. Just he would have to prove, or I would have to prove. This is my story now. They gave it up when they named him Ben. You would have to prove that she was a threat. Like you thought you were gonna get hurt. But stop trying to save her. Just get a restraining order.
Well, I almost said that. I love how wishy-washy this guy is. He's like, that fucking psycho was here. I got to make sure the doors are locked. But I do want to get her help.
But I love my big creep wife. So
her face is terrifying to me now.
Yeah.
Even the thought of it. But
her ass is out of this one. No.
Yeah. That's what he's going to do. He's not going to try to stop the behavior, but instead of peeking with her creepy ass face, he's going to be like, can you just surprise me with your boobs?
Yeah, that's the thing. If she was naked, would you notice?
Same facial expression and everything. Yeah. It's like, this has been the best 6 months of my life.
So I did what any husband in my position would do. I called her mother. I didn't want to, believe me. Her mother, Mary Ann, and I were never on the best of terms. We never fought or anything like that. She just wasn't a very warm person and wasn't really easy to get along with. She hardly ever smiled, and when she did, only her lips would move into a thin-lipped smile, leaving her eyes as blank as before. She gave off this aura that felt like she was permanently on the offensive. I'd only met her twice, and both times were for such short visits. I got the impression she didn't approve of me for her daughter.
Probably if you've been married 6 years and only met your mother-in-law twice.
Yeah.
Like, that seems... I mean, I guess geographically, I don't know, maybe.
Hey, she can hang out with her mother anytime she wants. I got laptop games to play.
Well, and again, to harken back to early in the story, he's only met the mother-in-law twice. Who knows how many times she's seen him? Like, this could be a genetic thing.
Yeah. A trade, if you will. They taught to one mother to her daughter over the course of centuries. Lynn always ushered us out quickly, as she didn't want me to feel uncomfortable, which I was grateful for. Being in her mother's company felt almost unbearable, like walking on glass. I was glad when we moved 3 states away so we didn't have to see her often. I was happy to avoid the woman, but I needed her help. I really didn't want to talk to her at all, but I had to talk to someone, and someone who knew Lynn better than I did. So I grit my teeth and did what I had to. Yes, she answered, already sounding irritated. Marianne, it's me, Ben. Do you have a minute to talk? I asked. I could hear her cluck her tongue in irritation. I'm in the middle of writing some checks, but if you insist, I suppose I can spare a moment. What is it that you want to discuss, Benjamin? She said, coolly. It's about Lynn. She's been acting strangely, and I was wondering if you had any idea whether there was something... I was quickly interrupted. It's a bit difficult to follow your rambling, Benjamin. What is it you want from me? She asked. This is actually pretty well written. I've met fucking people like this.
Yeah.
And they would be just as annoyed as our main character is. She asked. I could almost see her standing there in her thin sweater and slacks, tapping her fingernails impatiently on the table. I wanted to know if you had ever noticed any odd behavior, or possibly any mental health issues, I asked. There was a long, uncomfortable pause that I couldn't tell was because she was just thinking or something else. Finally, after a few seconds, she spoke. I'm not sure if this is one of your jokes, Benjamin, but if so, I don't find the humor in it. Now, I do have business to attend to, as I've said, so if you don't mind, she said, but I cut her off before she could get rid of me. Marianne, it's not a joke. I'm sincerely concerned about Lynn's mental health. Her behavior has been very erratic lately. I'm very worried about her, and I figured as her mother you would be as well, I said, my frustration evident in my voice. If you're truly concerned, then I suggest you get the health professionals involved. It's a doctor, but call them
the healthologists, if you will.
I would recommend you round up some medical individuals.
I like that too, because now I'm picturing like physically rounding up like you're just driving around lassoing.
Go to the local tavern and be like, I need some doctors. We're gonna wrangle me a peaker.
Like, does Costco have that? Can you get bulk doctors there? Like, if you got the membership?
A 12-pack of opinions. One of them will tell me what I want to hear. I don't know what you expect of me, she snapped. I could tell she was seconds away from hanging up, and for some reason I was desperate not to let her. I had the feeling that she knew a lot more than she was letting on. Please, if not for me, do it for Lynn, I tried. I heard a faint, shaky intake of breath, as if she were trying to hold her steely persona together, but failing. Marianne, what's wrong? I started. Benjamin, I don't know what to tell you. My only advice would be to seek professional help. Do not call here again. Goodbye. I tried to call out to her, but she had hung up. I tried to wrap my head around the call and her refusal to help me. Even if she didn't like me, why wouldn't she want to help her own daughter? I couldn't understand that. I tried to replay the conversation, desperate to find something I missed. After a while, I almost gave up.
Didn't the story start with like how perfect his wife was and her family was normal too? Yeah. And then it was like, oh, his mom's always been a bitch. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Story broken.
Not one fault in that
end.
family, except I hated that fucking mother-in-law.
Although I guess it's not necessarily an inconsistent, because they've kind of painted this main character as unlikable. So maybe like the average person also reacts this way when Ben calls him. Like,
I don't know if he's done anything unlikable so far.
Yeah, I don't know.
He kind of rolls over.
Yeah, like not. That's what I mean when I say unlikable. It's not like he's a jerk by any means, but it's almost too much the opposite way. Like he's too like somebody would like mug him and take his wallet, and his first thought would be like, I don't understand why somebody would take somebody else's wallet. It's like, you dumbass.
It just doesn't really stand up, you know. When there's a time for men to be men, and that time was when she spilt your coffee, right? And you'd be like, cut the shit, and like
that was his problem, is chuckling that off. He chuckled, and she thought, he's into this.
I would have served her papers on the spot. I'd be like, that was my favorite shirt, you fucking asshole. After a while, I almost gave up until I remembered her last words to me. Seek professional help. She said those words with a bit of urgency. I could have just been grasping at straws, but no, I was sure her voice had changed, ever so slightly when she had said that, as if they were very important. They are. You were gonna do that before.
Right.
What had she meant? What the fuck?
So I went to my local professional sports team.
I spent years in the library looking up what a medical professional could be.
Well, that's the problem, is she said seek professional help. She didn't specify which profession. So he went to like a mechanic, and then a chef. Like
LeBron James has entered the picture. I assumed she had been referring to medical professionals, but maybe she was referring to someone else. Someone that for some reason feel comfortable saying directly. Or maybe I was just desperate. I waited for Chris to get home, and after a very long and exhausting conversation with him and Rebecca, I convinced them that Lynn truly needed psychiatric help. I didn't tell them everything. I wasn't prepared to go into it yet, but I told them about our last encounter, how she'd hidden in the bathroom peeking at me from the closet. They were obviously shocked.
Again, if you leave everything else out and only describe that one situation, it's like, okay,
it's a weird joke, but it's not like a pattern of weird behavior.
Yeah, we need to go get psychologists involved. It's very important here, guy, to relay all the details. But anyway.
They were obviously shocked, but thankfully they believed me. They too just wanted to help her. Still, they didn't think it was all that serious. Weird maybe, but not dangerous. They just kept saying that Lynn had to be playing some kind of weird joke. Maybe for YouTube, Rebecca offered, if only half-heartedly. Chris didn't think we should involve the police just yet. He offered instead to go with me, and I readily accepted. He reasoned that calmly talking to her, trying to coax her into going willingly, was the best recourse. I agreed to do it his way. At least I wouldn't be going into that house alone. We drove over this morning, just after breakfast. There was no way I was going at night. When we pulled into the driveway, my stomach began doing somersaults. Her car wasn't there, but I still didn't let my guard down. The front door was ajar, and for a split second I thought we'd see her eyes staring through the gap. I was shaking and starting to sweat. Chris, however, was fine. He waited for me to open the door, his hands in his pockets like he was going on a fucking stroll through the park. I envied his ignorance.
A bit dramatic.
Yeah. I pushed the door open and was immediately hit with the stench of rot. Chris smelled it too, and he walked in the house behind me with his nose scrunched up. What do you guys use to clean the floors around here? Shit? Chris mumbled.
That's a interesting,
That's a really,
something smells bad. It must be the thing you're cleaning your floors with.
That's a really great, bad joke.
Yeah.
Just zero creativity. All right, I love it. What's your soap? Shit. Shut up, I said, my eyes darting around for any signs of Lynn. The house was deadly quiet and dark despite being 10 in the morning. All the curtains were closed up tight, refusing to allow any sunlight inside. If I hadn't left it just 2 days prior, I'd have thought the house to be abandoned. We moved through each room, carefully checking any place that she might hide, occasionally calling her name. "Why the fuck are you looking under the couch?" Chris asked eventually. "Aren't we looking for your wife?" He was looking at me like I was a moron.
Well.
Yeah. "Let's just go upstairs," I whispered. He shook his head but followed me up the stairs to check the bathroom and spare bedroom. On the way up, my shoes crunched over pieces of glass that looked to be littered over a few of the steps. I noticed that one of Lynn and my wedding portraits that hung on the wall along the staircase had been smashed. The frame hung crookedly, all the glass removed. I stared at the picture, a lump forming in my throat. We had taken that photo just after leaving the church after saying our vows. She looked so beautiful in her white gown. I looked at Lynn's beautiful face. I never dreamed her face would ever be a source of terror for me. We climbed the rest of the steps and checked the spare bedrooms, but it looked completely untouched. I was hesitant to go into the bathroom, my fear from that night coming back to me all at once. Chris noticed and offered to go in by himself, but I couldn't let him do that. So we walked in together, checking the closet and the shower. The bathroom looked as if it hadn't been touched since the night I left. "I don't think she's here, Ben. Why don't you pack some clothes and we'll try coming back tomorrow?"
Sorry, just a little delay, but one of them had to go in first, or else, because now I'm picturing them both like kind of sidling in at the same time, like having to squeeze through the door.
They tightly embraced.
Yeah.
And walked in sideways, which is what they teach you in the army. Anytime you're feeling a little bit frightened.
Yeah, that's the part you never see. You always see the guy in front with the big battering ram thing or the C4 like blow the door. You never see the two soldiers behind him embrace him.
We are crossing into enemy lines. Touch dicks.
Yeah, side step.
Chris said I nodded and went into our bedroom and shoved some clothes into a duffel bag. When I checked inside our closet, I came across the source of the smell and gagged. Chris took one look and lost all color in his face. He had to go stand by the stairs to get away from the sight and smell. I gazed down in shock at what lay inside my bedroom closet. Soaking into the rug were at least a dozen eyeballs, all carefully laid out in pairs. Some were as large as a quarter, while others were as tiny as a marble. I stared down at the eyes she had collected from small animals, and I wondered how she had gotten them, and shuddered at the thought. I think there's really only one way to get eyeballs.
Yeah, it's eye mart.
Yeah. Did you know there's a little button on the back of your head that'll pop your eyes out? Man, I thought I had it bad with Becca's shoe addiction. Really, Chris? All right. He's just going to quip on this. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's a big step up from, did you wash your floor with shit?
He just saw a bunch of fucking eyeballs in a closet, and he's like, reminds me of my wife. Like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude? Man, I thought I had it bad with Becca's shoe addiction. But fuck me, your wife's in here collecting eyeballs, Chris said, gagging. Ben, I think we should go.
It takes a lot of the brilliance out of his quip away if you're gagging while you say it. Like you're supposed to say it like.
But I'm getting that joke out no matter how much I vomit.
The wife's shoe addiction.
I thought I had a crappy marriage. Called from the hall. I'm getting nauseous. All right. I grabbed my duffel and shut the closet door on my new nightmare. I stepped out into the hall and took a deep breath of air. I could taste the rot on my tongue and I couldn't help but gag. Who the fuck lines up eyeballs in their closet like that?
Optometrists, all of them.
Yeah, it's the only way to learn.
Right.
I tried to tell you she needed help, I said. She doesn't need help, Ben. She needs a fucking exorcist. he said. You coming or what? I can't stand the smell any. His words died in his throat, and his eyes grew wide with fear. I didn't ask him why. I could feel it. Someone was watching me, and I didn't think it was the eyes in the closet. I turned around, my eyes slowly scanning the bedroom. Christ, I whispered as I finally saw what we had missed. Under the bed, curled on her side, watching us with the excitement of a kid on Christmas morning, was my wife.
So I like that he looked under the couch, but not the bed.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, kind of an obvious spot. She got so good at hiding. And
yeah, it's had to be somewhere.
You know, again, well played. Now you got him looking under, like, physically impossible hiding spots.
Why are you scanning through the leaves in that book? You don't know, Chris. Yeah. You don't know.
He was shaking his shoes out to try to get her to fall out of them, but not looking under the bed. She held her hands together just under her chin, and they were shaking eagerly. Now that she had been found, I could hear the quiet noises she was making, a sort of hiccuping sound in her throat, as if the excitement was just too much for her. It was unnerving, to say the least. Wide eyes and that same huge smile. Everything in me told me to run, but I forced it away. This was my wife. No matter how twisted, she was still the woman I married. I had to help her. Lynn, I said softly. She didn't respond, but her head bobbed back and forth in two quick little movements, as if she were nodding. Baby, I just want to help, okay? Can you let me do that? I asked. I had taken a single step forward, approaching her like some kind of dangerous animal. I love you, Lynn, I said softly, taking another step closer. She let a tiny moan escape her wide-open mouth, and I had to resist the urge to run. Her shoulders were starting to quiver, and her eyes grew as large as saucers. I crouched down so I could see her better, and immediately saw the blood. Her hands were covered in it. They trembled the more the closer I got, as if she was barely able to contain herself. Lynn, are you hurt? You're bleeding, I said. She bobbed her head again, her bloody fingers moving up and down as if playing an invisible piano. They occasionally grazed her chin, leaving smears of blood on her skin. I wanted to recoil in disgust. The smell that was coming off her was revolting. I could feel the vomit trying to climb up my throat. Her lips were dry and stretched thin, blood seeping between the cracks. I knew she wouldn't come out on her own, but I didn't want to leave her in the state she was in. I scooted closer and reached out to her. The excited hiccuping sounds got louder and her hands shook, fingers flexing. It was then that I could see the blood oozing from in between her fingers. Oh my God, Lynn, you're bleeding, I said, instinctively. I reached out to take her hand, but before I could even touch her, her hand sprang out towards me. A sharp pain shot through my arm, and I fell back on my ass. My arm burned, and I could see the blood dripping down onto the carpet. I looked back at her in shock and saw her grinning madly, her fingers clutching a large shard of glass. You all right in there?
Good. It's been a little while since I've heard from you.
Hey, how about a courtesy flush in there? Thanks, Chris. You all right in there? Chris asked from behind me. I turned my head slightly and nodded to him, cradling my arm to my chest. When I turned back to face Lynn, I saw that her focus had shifted. She wasn't looking at me anymore, and she wasn't smiling anymore either. She was staring past me, her eyes glaring at Chris the way a hungry lion might stare at an antelope. Her mouth was still hanging open, but it was twisted into a snarl. I got to my feet and began walking backwards down the hall, afraid to take my eyes off her. Are you bleeding? Chris asked. The moment the words left his mouth, Lynn started fast scooting out from under the bed. The glass shard
I'm
still
curious
in her
what
fist.
move a fast scoot is.
Not fast enough that you can, like, kick her. You know, keep her down.
Shut the door, run, do something. Like,
no, you're staying under that bed. God damn it.
That's kind of my point. Like, whatever qualifies as a fast scoot is still a relatively slow movement. Maybe I'm just projecting again as a older,
I'm just saying,
fat
if
guy.
something is, if somebody's crawling out from under your bed, We got 2 full-grown men here.
Yeah, you've got the upper hand.
You can keep her pinned down and get that shit out of her hand. Like, if you can't, you know, and as we have established with this family, not the manliest men.
No, yeah.
But I still feel like they're very quick to be like, she's unstoppable, run. Chris, run, go, I yelled. He must have been too afraid to move because a second later I felt my back bump into him. He was still standing at the top of the stairs, staring at the horror that was my wife. Lynn had crawled completely out from under the bed and stood in the bedroom doorway, her fists twisted in rage. Her whole body was visibly tense. Blood ran down her fingers onto the floor. Jesus, Lynn, Chris said. You, playing hide and seek? Don't quit. God damn, Chris.
Yeah.
I reached back and pushed him towards the steps. Move your ass, Chris.
He fell down the steps and died.
Yeah. I said as quietly but as firmly as I could. Lynn bobbed her head in fast, sharp motions and began to grin, stretching her mouth open wider and wider so that her chin seemed to touch her chest. I heard Chris mutter a prayer, and then he was running down the stairs. I stood at the top of the steps, stuck between the love for a woman who clearly needed serious help and self-preservation. I think we're all riding that line, my friend. I only want to help, I said, choking back tears. Her eyes focused on me once again as she slowly lifted the glass, holding it out in front of her, and then she started sprinting towards me, grinning with utter excitement. Thankfully, my body took over, and I flew down the stairs, skipping 2 or 3 at a time. I made it to the front door before I felt her leap onto my back, wrapping her arms around my neck, her open mouth next to my ear so that I could hear those terrible, hiccuping sounds up close. I shook her off me, knocking her to the floor. I felt a searing pain in my back as she went, but I tore open the front door and bolted to my car. Chris was standing in the front yard talking on the phone with the police. I didn't say a word. I just ran to my car and jumped in. Chris
Fuck
took the
you,
hint.
Chris. I'm out.
Chris, you could have called from the car.
Right.
Yeah. Chris took the hint and followed me, still on line with 911. I watched the rearview mirror, sure I'd see her there, running after us, but I never did. I went straight to the ER and got 11 stitches in my arm and 3 on my back. The police asked a lot of questions and went back to the house to do a search, but, of course, Lynn wasn't there. They advised me to stay with a friend or relative for a while and to file a restraining order as soon as I could, but none of those things would matter. Somehow I just knew. I dropped Chris off at home and went to a motel an hour away. I wanted to put as much distance between me and Lynn as I could, but I only wanted to drive an hour, apparently.
As much distance as I could. I just didn't have any gas money. Fuck.
You know they have motels further than an hour away. This is where I've been.
Also, it seems weird to just not just like stay with Chris and his wife. Like safety in numbers, you'd think.
Not necessarily.
Well, no, but
I would recommend that Chris and his wife go an hour in the other direction.
Right. Like she can only follow one of us.
Yeah, and Chris was really the one who pissed her off.
Right, and I don't blame. I mean, there was those jokes. Like she had nothing against him until he opened. She's like, "Your jokes are so fucking bad, Chris. You gotta die."
You gotta die. Which is like most family get-togethers, really.
Right.
I wanted to put as much distance between me and Lynn as I could. This is where I've been for the last 4 hours. I thought maybe the police would find her, maybe they'd get her the help she desperately needs. But now I don't think so. Because 40 minutes ago I got a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. I found you. And a picture attached. The picture was dark and grainy, but I instantly knew what it was. There was no mistaking my wife's eye. I started typing this out immediately after. I don't know what to do. I'm alone and scared, and I can't help but feel that I'm being watched. The end.
See, I told you he should have stuck with Chris, because at least then they'd be together and being watched and about to die. I liked it. I really did. Like it's
that's a really good story.
It's funny because it's just one of those things I would have never thought of, but I can't think of too many things that would actually, like, I don't know, like it turning actually physically violent was, I mean, you had to have some kind of like,
It had to be a threat at some point.
Yeah, but the creepy part, like I said, was just the build up to that, the peeping or whatever.
Like they're one of.
And I can't think of too many things more creepy than that. But it's such a simple thing. We like joked about it, like being a hilarious prank, but like that would be creepy as fuck.
It would be very successful.
Yeah, and it is pretty genius for, as a premise from the standpoint what we actually did talk about like it'd be the kind of thing if somebody was doing that but nobody else was witnessing it, like it would be nearly impossible to convey like what you're going through.
That's the thing. It would be like it would turn into like way too long of a story for what this is meant to be. But if they came back to the house and she was totally cool and normal, and Chris is like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? Like if it just like kept like pulling at that dude's psychology. That would be pretty great. But I really liked it. We talked about the brilliance, and there's a comment on this post that quotes it too, where she's like, maybe I just got better at it. It's like such a great fucking... Yeah, it's just like, because what a way to rev the paranoia back up when you think it's the one
thing that you can say that's like it's the perfect where it's like that is 1,000% just be a typical like jokey like ha ha ha, but then you're like, or is it like that? That was probably my favorite line from any of our creepypastas that we've done.
Yeah, it was really that is a brilliant, like, story making line.
The only thing I gotta admit that I was kind of hoping is when he ran away the first time I was staying with Chris and his sister-in-law, Chris's wife, that his wife had gotten them in on it. So like he woke up in the middle of the night and like Chris was just staring at him from around the corner, be like, son of a bitch. By the end of the story, it should have been the whole world was just everywhere he looked, there was people peeking at him from around corners, like that. But no, that would actually be a stupid story, and this one ended pretty good.
Yeah. And they didn't get divorced. So
that's the best part. They made the marriage work. Like it's one of those open. It's an open-ended story you can plug in however you want it to end, and I choose that this cat and mouse terrifying game goes on for decades. Like,
I would love that ending so much, where it's like he goes to talk to his dad, and his dad just gives him that cliche like, "Well, son, marriage is hard work." And like. It's like, okay, well, I guess I just have to deal with my creepy-ass wife now.
The dad looks over his shoulder and his wife's peeking.
Your mom's been peeking at me. Why do you think I got this tool shed?
One man's realization that this is what marriage is.
Just peeking at each other in uncomfortable silence. That's great. So, yeah, I guess, hey, it's an extra long episode to make up for the one we didn't.
It's worth every second.
Yeah. Great story. I had a lot of fun reading it.
Yeah, the only thing that pisses me off is you always seem to find the really good ones, and then I find ones that I think are going to be really good, and like halfway through, it's like, I'm kind of bored of this. And if it's my story, then... So, I don't know. I need to get better at finding stuff.
Find ones with the main character named Ben, and you can't go wrong. All right. We will leave now.
Yep.
Sorry to intrude.
Yeah. Didn't mean to waste so much of your day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I guess you got your story. You don't really need us anymore, do you? And we'll be back next time with another thing from another place.